Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Swampside Chats. I was just fixing my hair for those of you who noticed. This is a weekly occurrence. It's almost my signature now. There we go. All right, looking smooth. Hi, I'm Rob Anderson, running for Congress in Louisiana's 3rd Congressional District. Many of you know who I am, and some of you are meeting us for the first time. Tonight we have a special treat. One, we will be taking questions from the live audience if anybody joins us. I don't think anybody's in yet. There's somebody. Good evening, Chris. And of course, we have some series of questions that we've taken in over the day on social media. But today, you're in for a special treat because you're going to get to meet the team that usually I introduce off screen. We're going to do a little few-minute interview with each one today. I'm very proud of my team. I love working with these people. Each and every one of them has my respect and trust, and that's why they're here. And I just want to share them with you just a little bit of behind the scenes of a campaign, the people who drive me to be better. And that's what we're going to do tonight. Now, first up tonight, I'm doing it out of order, but you'll be seeing our social media director, our campaign manager, and our deputy campaign manager. First up tonight is Dave Longline, who's my social media director. And sitting down now. There he is. Hey, Dave. Let me move over a little bit. Not too much man spreading there, but it's comfortable.
I'm keeping it to a minute.
This is Dave Longline, whom I met a few years ago. We've been constant friends then. Our politics are closely aligned enough that we get along on everything, and we can always agree to disagree on very minor details, but he's been invaluable to me. So thanks for coming on, Dave. Say hello to everybody, of course. And we're gonna do this like a casual interview format. I'll ask you a few questions, and then I'll try not to talk over you because for this portion of the show, it's not about me; it's about my team. Yeah. So, Dave, tell me a little bit about yourself. I know you're from Louisiana, you're born and raised, local boy, still in the hometown.
Yeah, I was born and raised in Broussard. Well, born in Lafayette General, but. Traveled around the world, but always came back home. I've never really lived anywhere aside from Broussard, aside from like a small stint at the University Courtyards. That's pretty much it.
And of course, you did spend some time overseas, so we're gonna allow you to segue to that portion. Dave is a U.S. Army veteran and did serve in Iraq.
The part you could tell. Yeah.
There you go. But maybe you could tell us how those experiences and being a soldier, one who actually signed up to put your life on the line for your country, how that led you to where you are now in politics specifically.
Yeah, so I ended up being deployed to Operation Enduring Freedom 2 in 2005, and finally came back home in 2006. And one of my experiences in war was kind of like, what the hell are we doing here? Because the whole thing was built on, from my understanding, basically a bit of a fabrication. So at that point, I started getting more interested in politics. And over the course of the years, I started paying more and more attention. And in about 2012, 2013, I started just as a hobby, kind of like jotting down what I would do.
What changes you would make? What fixes you would make?
Yeah, basically making like a proto platform. Thinking nothing of it at the time, and then Clay Higgins ran and was like, "Well, I've got to do something about this."
On the Trump train in 2016. Yeah.
It's more than that. Clay Higgins is actually a bona fide monster. I could not do something. Like somebody has to pick up the torch.
Right, of course.
So that's when I decided to run, and that's when I met you.
Yes, 2018, for those who don't know, and this is where you're discovering it. In 2018, Dave and I both ran for Congress. There was a field of 7 that time, including the incumbent. And that's where Dave and I first met. I believe it was at an Indivisible Acadiana forum. I think we agreed that was the first time we met. And then soon after that, we exchanged contact info. We had both also attended the Unrigged conference earlier that year in New Orleans. Never met.
We passed each other up a couple times.
And of course, another congressional candidate from 2018 was there, Justin DeWitt, as was Claire, who will be sitting down here later. But yeah, there were a lot of us at this Unrigged. There was a lot of, it felt like to me at the time, an uprising of a lot of people saying this is not only is enough, it's too much. We got to do something.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, we shared that trait. We both ran for Congress, and this time, due to our social media build up or for whatever reason, our determination to keep going, to not give up after a single failed attempt, which was, almost a lark. Certainly it was for me. I mean, I was sincere about it, but I knew we could raise a following and share our message to the country and really build a campaign of the people. And I think we've done that this time. And Dave has been a great help for me on that. So tell them what you specifically bring to the campaign. You and I know what it is, but
so I've been building up a bit of a social media following, and
to clarify, since most of them know me from Twitter, Facebook is more of Dave's expertise.
Yes, that's more my expertise. Twitter, not so much,
and Reddit,
and Reddit as well.
Yeah.
But basically, I've been just honestly trying to get people to be civil to one another and actually talk and have an open conversation without coming to each other's throats. And it translated eventually into being a political speaker. So I was hired on by Rob to do pretty much exactly that, and so here I am.
Here we are. Why don't you go ahead and tell them what's your political information page? If anybody does follow Facebook, his public page, political information with Dave Longman.
No, Political Sanity.
Political Sanity. If you want to follow Dave separately. Of course, you'll hear his voice all the time, not even realize it on the Rob Anderson for Louisiana Facebook page. When you're reading that page, you're reading Dave. Obviously, everything's been run by both of us. Dave doesn't say anything that we don't want him to. So, but we agree enough that Dave has been invaluable. Well, thank you for joining us today, Dave. And we're going to move on to the next guest, as we should say. No commercial interruptions. This is live feed, so we're just going to go right into it. And next up is our deputy campaign manager, who we hired on when we started expanding Claire's staff. One of our earliest hires was Ash Levesque. Come on and sit down. Here's Ash, deputy campaign manager, Ash Levesque. So you were also raised in Louisiana, and you're local.
Born in New Orleans, lived in Louisiana most of my life, lived a little stint in Santa Fe, New Mexico, just north. So yeah, I've been Louisiana born and raised.
There you go. And one thing we were talking about backstage, shall we say, in the green room, when we were plotting for this, is everybody now here lives in this district. These are all local people who really want to get involved, which is what inspired me to do these interviews tonight, because you're talking to people in the district. These are people who are fighting for themselves. We're not just reaching out to strangers. These are people in district. And that was one of the great things that when Ash first reached out to me, when we started hiring, and then I interviewed her, and she was an instant hire due to her background and her competency. So tell us, you could tell them, as I should say, since I already know, like how we came to hire you, your expertise. And I know you've done the Jazz Fest and a lot of venues and a lot of party planning and setups and a lot of organizational stuff. So tell us the road that got you to our doorstep.
It was kind of it was a happenstance kind of thing. I needed an income, and Rob needed someone who could organize them, and I was very good at that, and I convinced them of that. We're still waiting to see that happen because we've been in shutdown mode. But
it's COVID-19.
There is COVID-19.
It's just a point out that. But we've been doing a lot of work behind the scenes also. You've begun to get involved in our social media. And our
campaign has been an unprecedented kind of attack because, we've never had to campaign on social media basically exclusively, almost exclusively. So, it's been an interesting ride, and but
I learned a lot.
I've learned a lot.
Now tell me exactly what you consider the most important things that we need in this district, and the reasons I have y'all to push me these directions. Because as we know, when I talk about my platform, a lot of times I drone on and on about jobs and infrastructure and the big picture items, but the real human cost is why I have people to remind me of why we're here. So your most important issues.
Well, I think I bring to the table an interesting perspective because as a single mother in South Louisiana, following a divorce, but a multiple business owner, it's been an interesting struggle to refine my footing in our local economy. And education has definitely been on the front runner for me. I would like to see my kids have better opportunities, and for it not to be so much of a struggle for those who can't afford for the, my kids were beyond the pre-K level when things really hit the fan, but I see so many kids falling behind. So education for me is a big thing, but the quality of life for South Louisiana has just really been so sour because, meeting, the cost of living has continued to rise, and our economy has not been able to keep up with that. Our wages have not kept up with that. And so, me as a single mother in 2003, making $1,200 a month was fine. I could afford it just fine. But now a single mother in this current economy is a huge struggle. So I would like to see better opportunities for our kids to venture into, and better wages for the people who live here, work here, born and raised here, make this economy work. The backbone of this economy is on the people who live and work here, and we need to support us better.
And as we were talking about before, COVID-19 has really brought that to the forefront of the national consciousness, when suddenly people are not, and not to mock anybody's job, but to show how important people are, when people can no longer get haircuts or go to movie theaters. It changes everything, and it really highlights the perspective of the working class.
Now we really have identified who is essential in our local economy, and it's not the people who are making $25, $30, $50 an hour. It's the people who can't get above minimum wage, and those are the people that run our economy, and we have to identify and respect that more and support them better.
Right.
And during this whole COVID-19 pandemic shutdown, everybody's been put on a level playing field, and for the first time possibly since the Great Depression, everybody knows what it feels like to be poor, and it's a huge struggle to know how you're going to pay your next bill or feed your kids or whatever. And so I think it's been a big wake-up call for a lot of people to really identify what the real issues are in our local economy.
That's a great way to put it too. Everybody finally understands what it's like to be poor. They can see it directly. Well, thank you, Ash, for being on with us tonight. And of course, everybody's going to go back behind the camera, and they're going to man the boards, make sure I don't say anything stupid. Thank you very much.
Oh yes, it's my birthday.
And we got a shout out, everybody. Happy birthday to Ash. It is her
48th. I'm proud to say it.
48th birthday, and here she is at work, working for you. Thank you, Ash. And of course, last and not least in any manner, the star of the show.
Oh, okay.
Claire Stagg, campaign manager, friend, and we met obviously a couple years ago when Justin DeWitt was running.
Yeah.
And we immediately clicked. Claire is a powerhouse progressive here in Louisiana. I don't mind buttering her up a little bit, so it's okay. And it was a big, it was my first and most important hire. The decision I made right out of the gate is I absolutely wanted Claire to do this. So now we're going to let you know a little bit why. You're going to see the encyclopedia of knowledge. I'm just going to turn it over to Claire for the next 45 minutes. I'm not. I'm putting us, yeah, right. So yeah, why don't you tell them a little bit about yourself? Obviously, you're raised in Bossier. You came up from.
Yeah, I grew up in Bossier. I was there from when I was 6 to. I can't figure out where your camera is, where to look. Until I graduated high school, go Vikings, and I moved to Baton Rouge to go to LSU, go Tigers. And I studied political science, public policy there. And then I actually, guys don't hate me, but I started working for a Republican congressional campaign first.
Great.
I didn't choose that. They sent us emails, and yeah, so I worked for Garrett Graves, and despite not really liking his, political opinions. I really enjoyed that campaign and decided that that's definitely what I wanted to keep doing. So after that, I moved back into the light, and I worked for the Louisiana Democratic Party in 2015 when Governor Edwards was running. And then after that, I started doing work in the state legislature, which despite being the craziest group of people I've ever met in my life, and kudos to everyone who continues to do state legislative work. It's the most frustrating thing I've ever done in my life.
Soul-sucking.
It is, but I really enjoyed it. So,
Excuse me. Go ahead.
I worked for an organization called Louisiana Progress, and I worked on tax policy for working families, the earned income tax credit. My passion became adolescent reproductive health work, which is, code for sex ed basically, and got, laughed out of lots of committees for advocating that we teach our kids how to keep themselves healthy, just like we would teach them how to do math.
Weird idea.
What a crazy idea, right? I got to go to Washington, D.C. a couple times and lobby my own state legislators my own congressman for the Real Education for Healthy Youth Act, which has still not passed, which means, Rob, you get to sign on to it. So.
Yeah, so we get to pick that up. One of the things we were talking about backstage, and Claire is a whiz on this, and she brings so much to the campaign, but one of it is the absolute knowledge of local Louisiana legislation. And every now and then I retweet one of your articles of some crazy thing they did. People don't understand what we're up against down here. And so that's kind of what has brought you to our campaign, what we can advocate for. So what would you like to see in this district? What are the biggest issues you want to push for and you help push me towards?
So one of the things we've talked about a little bit is Louisiana has been trying for like years and years and years to pass an equal pay bill. Not to burst anyone's bubble, but I don't ever see the state legislature doing that. And so as a result, I think it's really important that we attack that in federal policy. There's, there was the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act that President Obama signed when he was in office, but that's really just not gone far enough. So now we've got the Paycheck Fairness Act, which goes up every year. That's really important to Louisiana because we have a giant female workforce, and why
Absolutely.
Would anyone ever want to stay, or how do you expect them to get ahead when first of all, white women are making 69 cents on the dollar, but Black and Latino women are making less than half. So it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, close to 50 cents.
It's close to 50 cents, and that really hurts our economy. One of the other things is I think Osh spoke to this, like better access to pre-K and childcare.
You had told me about some crazy program. It seems crazy in Louisiana. But for Louisiana, but then you had told me about a pilot program that it actually worked.
Well, it's not even a pilot. Yeah. Oklahoma has had universal pre-K since 2002. Oklahoma
has universal pre-K.
And that's worked out really well for them. I see that being a really good idea in Louisiana, and a really good framework for how we could do that nationwide. It was really unpopular at first, and now it's been going on since 2002. And what do you know? Their kids are healthier. Their math scores are better, the better economy. So we need to do that both at a state and a national level. And then I think one of the other things would probably be tax policy. I've done a lot of work on tax policy, and especially in the state of Louisiana, we have a really unfair tax code that burdens low-income people, single mothers, at the expense of, for the most part, the very wealthy, but mostly oil companies and stuff like that. So your opponent actually voted for the ginormous tax cut for the very, very wealthy a few years ago. And I think that we need both on the state and national level again to create a tax code that works for working families and for workers, and not for those who seek to automate our jobs.
Somebody who pulls home $20,000 a year is not taking that tax cut and buying another yacht. They're buying groceries, they're buying extra diapers, they're catching up on their credit card bills. Yeah, I mean, put the money in the hands of the working people. So any other Louisiana issues we want to talk about, or we want to start tackling questions? And anything else specifically in this district that you want to? We have so many ideas that we're pushing for. By the way,
we do. I mean, look,
so we had to isolate for the video.
I would just say, and I'll keep it short, but in this district, I mean, we're suffering from a lack of investment in our people and our infrastructure. and in jobs that are not in oil and gas. This is a district that has a huge need for like people who are going to work in education, so teachers, healthcare workers, whether that's nurses or home health aides or whatever it is. We have so much capacity to grow this economy, but when we think about our district, we always think about how do we go back to oil and gas, and that's not what this district's going to need long term. We're going to melt and fall into the sea if we keep doing that. So let's invest in our people, and
because people are a good investment. It just seems
the best investment.
It just seems so much of a no-brainer for me. Well, I know we have a stack of questions going, so I'm not to cut Claire short, and we may do this again sometime. But thank you very much for being on tonight. Campaign Manager Claire Stack, of course, Ash and Dave, and now you get just me. And now let the questions roll. Let me read off the screen real quick while you're getting queued up. Chris said hello. Sam said hi, Dave and Rob. Hi, Sam. Hi, guys from SB Johnson. Sam also said happy birthday, Ash, and as did SB Johnson. And you already answered. And we are good to go. Hit me with your questions if you have any live. Otherwise, we're going to start the script.
Okay. The first one was from Demetra Jones. I believe Demetra's in our district, actually.
Yes, and Demetra Jones, you are in our district.
Can you hear me?
Scott.
Okay.
Oh, no. Either come closer or I'll just repeat the question. Yeah. Right. What it usually happens is I just repeat the question. Or you could do that. We're going to have Claire back.
I wish I'd known this was going to happen. I would have dressed differently. Okay.
Yeah, from Demetra Jones in our district.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on some Americans making mask wearing and social distancing part of the culture war?
That is an excellent question. And it's hard to tackle because obviously we have multiple administrations. For here in Louisiana, for example, we have a great governor, John Bell Edwards, and his plan from the beginning has always been interactive, scientific, and punctual, on the ball, responsive. So we don't necessarily feel the culture war about mask wearing, except when it comes from national news. We see other protests, people turning it into a Republican versus a Democrat issue. And I saw a great quote. It was actually from John Bell last night on a meeting he had, with the church leaders. Said that this is not a Republican, or the virus doesn't care if you're a Republican, an independent, or a Democrat. It should not be a partisan issue or a part of a culture war. People should be. We should insist that our media treat it not as a partisan talking point, but as a health issue, which is what it is. When we get down to it, the best scientific advice we have is to maintain social distancing of 6 feet or more if you have to go out in public, to wear a mask. And if both parties are wearing a mask and you social distance, the risk of catching the virus becomes some infinitesimal number. So that's why it should not be a culture war. It isn't a culture war. It isn't libertarians versus liberals, or I don't know what they're trying to spin it into, because I think they're trying to cover for the poor response initially from the national level. And then we kind of got caught off guard and became this political talking point, but it's not. We're in the middle of a pandemic. If you go out in public, wear a mask. Don't feel ashamed to wear a mask. And stay away from others who aren't. You should be socially distancing anyway. I don't see it as a culture war, and unfortunately, I know it's being perceived in that, but I try to treat it strictly as a health crisis.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, real men wear masks, guys. Come on. Okay, so we had another one. Edmund Major asked, "Do you support Louisiana becoming a constitutional carry state?" To talk about what that means, like.
Oh yeah, what should we explain? What constitutional carry?
So constitutional carry, Louisiana has really pretty lax laws on gun ownership and carry.
It is a 2A friendly state.
It is very. You can already open carry without a permit at 18 in Louisiana. So a constitutional carry basically means that it would take away all restrictions on your ability to carry a gun, open or concealed, meaning that you don't either have to register that gun, which you already don't have to, or that you don't have to have a permit to concealed carry. So, I mean, I have a concealed carry permit that I went and took a class for and got because I'm responsible, but people would rather not have to do that, I guess.
So when viewing, I am obviously pro 2A more so than may be the mainstream Democratic platform, but I am responsible and believe in responsible gun ownership. And I think that the requirement to conceal a weapon on your person, of demonstrating basic competency and a basic background check to apply for a permit to conceal carry is not too much to ask. So no, I don't support constitutional carry, because in Louisiana we just call that open carry. If you're openly carrying a weapon and other people around you can see it, that is already legal in Louisiana. So short version, no. Long answer. I hope I've explained why. Just like driving a car, and a minimum amount of basic competency demonstrated and a minimal amount of background check.
Yeah. By the way, our state legislature passed a bill this week, I think, last week maybe.
Last week.
To allow you to carry guns like on campus and in churches. And I want to say it was in bars. I'll have to double check that, but can you imagine?
Certainly, definitely churches. I remember.
So we're already moving towards like less regulation than more. Every year.
Yeah, we can't remove. I mean, perhaps our legislation does be removed. It's a good thing any representative should look at, taking away bad laws. However, we are not a very restrictive state with gun laws, so we're not talking about changing California's laws, for example, and their level of personal responsibility and restriction. We're a very 2A friendly state already.
Okay. Preston, I want to say Cropley said, as a combat veteran suffering from PTSD, I believe that the use of marijuana could have a bigger impact on PTSD treatment. How close are we to getting federally legalizing it across all 50 states? And what is your position on that topic?
Okay, well, I am pro-cannabis. I have always been pro-cannabis. I am absolutely in favor of descheduling cannabis as a Schedule I narcotic. And but the careful part is, but I think most of the Democratic Party at this point is on the same page. And it has to be tied in with amnesty, criminal justice reform. You can't just make something legal that has been illegal for years, that has ruined lives, that has incarcerated young men and women, and set them on a path of, the path of this, what they call it, the circle of poverty, without addressing those past mistakes. It should be legalized. And yes, of course, I even before then, and I think they've been messing with it at the state level, trying to get medical cannabis going in the normal Louisiana stop-start way. It's not complete enough, but yes, it definitely absolutely needs to be opened up for research. And especially for our veterans. I was part of a group last year, the Louisiana Veterans for Medical Cannabis, who held a rally in Baton Rouge and lobbied our state legislators on that very issue, getting more medicine available for veterans, especially for something that's been shown to be helpful, PTSD.
I think that there's a bill again to
yeah,
I don't know if it passed because session's got to end on the 1st.
Yeah, they've tweaked it and they haven't gone completely all the way. Right. On a federal level, yes, I'm absolutely in favor of getting the veterans all the help they need. I'm
going to say that this one must be from David, or it's someone else that's not named. Louisiana's economy is largely oil-based, but with COVID-19 causing oil to be far less profitable, causing layoffs, how can we help so many displaced workers?
Okay. The interesting thing about that one is there's a sort of false premise folded into the question, so that I will address. It is not COVID-19 that is caused a downfall or an instability in the current oil market here in Louisiana. What people may forget, right before the quarantine level started and the outbreak really happened in the United States, Russia and Saudi Arabia went into a price war over oil. And one of the regions most immediately and quickly affected by that, of course, is Louisiana, where we produce 25% of the country's oil. So the market was unstable. And as you know, we've been a net exporter of oil for a few years now. We are energy independent in the oil and gas industry. So it wasn't COVID-19 that caused a knockdown. As a matter of fact, I was on a call yesterday with the Southwest Louisiana Economic Development Council, where they discussed how most oil and gas industries have been running at least 60% capacity during this whole time. Now, yes, they have curtailed new leases and pulled people off of the platforms. that is probably a reaction to COVID, specifically because you got isolated people. If one person gets it, then you've got an outbreak. And so that may have been reacted. But the oil and gas industry, it always fluctuates. It is always cyclical. It is always seasonal. That industry is very strong, and don't believe otherwise. The entire country runs on oil. It's going to happen, or it will take, unfortunately, this kind of thing does have repercussions that ripple for a few years. This is not an overnight fix, no matter what happens. It's not like next month, all of a sudden, they're going to be back up to 100% capacity. It takes a little while to recover. However, it wasn't just COVID-19, and what the businesses are pushing, local businesses are pushing, social distancing, 25% capacity. Let's get into phase 2 and start reopening the economy, but do it safely in a manner where we don't have a second wave of COVID throwing the whole system into disarray.
Did you see you have a live one if you want to go ahead?
Oh, sure. What would you say to a very conservative Republican voter as to why they shouldn't support your opponent? Well, I would have to address then the fact that my opponent does not possess any of the actual working class credentials that I do. He does not possess any of the personal character or integrity that I do. He's already shown that he'll be sold to the highest bidder. One of the things we were talking about when prepping for this, and I may address net neutrality in a later question. However, we talked about the net neutrality issue that came up a couple of years ago, and the fact that Congressman Higgins voted against it, and his price tag was very low. We're talking about a telecommunications donation to Higgins of only $800. So not only is he corrupt and incorrigible and probably not a great person, he's also not a very good congressman, and he's a cheap date. He's a cheap date. Now, that's not to say that I will be more expensive. I don't take donations from corporate lobbyists, so that is what differentiates me. When I go in there, I'm going to be representing the people, and I'm not going to be representing them on an issue of the day. I'm going to represent them on the Constitution and the representation they deserve. It doesn't matter if it's a Democratic or Republican issue or an independent issue or a libertarian issue. I'm going to represent the people.
He's also not gotten any of his so-called priorities done. So, I mean, if you want to go,
he's also ineffective. He's also completely ineffective. I will say that as to why a Republican voter should vote for me. If you actually want a new I-10 bridge, vote for the guy who can negotiate with us in Congress to get his infrastructure package through without doing the political gimme of lobbyists and all that. You network with people. Every district needs something. We work together. And it appears this Congress has forgotten or completely skipped even the concept of working together. So I think that's something that needs to go back to Congress.
Another one that David had was misinformation and propaganda has become a larger issue since 2016. How can we trust our news sources?
That's a good one. I always go with the, I don't have an easy answer for that. I believe in institutions that have accountability. One of the questions I had gotten earlier online, as a matter of fact, when there's extreme reaction when somebody says, well, the New York Times made a mistake. Well, the New York Times makes a mistake. They print a public retraction of it and say, here's where we made a mistake and here's the actual truth. There is accountability. They are self-accountable and have been. They have a record of it for around 150 years. I don't remember exactly, but it was the late 1800s. They are sort of the gold standard of journalism, and as has become the Washington Post, which helped take down a president spying on his opponents, Richard Nixon. And there are various news sources that do have a record of accountability and credibility. And I believe in those. And I believe that the line between news and opinion has become so blurred these days that a lot of times people watch news and they're really watching somebody's opinion, whatever side it's on. God knows I love Rachel Maddow. I watch her on occasion. But that, if you stick to a single source, you're going to be more limited than anytime you hear a statement from either party or either position or any position, even if it's not binary. We don't have to be a binary culture. Investigate, look into it, look at what one reporter says about it and see if it's been sourced and verified and fact checked. I understand that requires a little more commitment for you, but it's come to the point where we as citizens are obligated to keep pursuing the truth. Don't become numb to the lies and the pandering. Seek the truth. It's out there. Everything can be searched. Don't believe opinion, and try to stay away from confirmation bias, which drives me nuts. People in echo chambers. Fox News has been accused of it, and of course NBC has also been accused of it. There's my fairness doctrine to that. Don't be so polarized. Look into it and make your own opinions.
And fact checking is not, the enemy of free speech. And also, if you're sharing something from like Red Patriot, EagleFreedom.net,
right, probably is not equivalent to the Washington
you might
Post.
want to look it up, right?
Yeah. I'm just saying, there are trusted sources.
Okay. Eric Richardson asked, do you have a plan for addressing scientific literacy and our current lack of critical thinking? It's what I feel is causing the largest schism in this country, and they both inherently exacerbate our racial and social issues. Good question.
Absolutely true. Education is key. I reduced it down to the lowest common denominator. What we have done on social media from the beginning and in person and every conversation we have, we always try to encourage people to seek the truth, to look up the facts, to reason instead of feel emotionally about certain issues. Always trust the science. Science is self-correcting. A lot of people say, well, scientists are wrong all the time. Yes, they are, but they build upon that knowledge, and there's a record of each mistake that was made to get to a point. Science is not a singular thing you learn once. It's a process, and I embrace that. For my entire life, they said our solar system had 9 planets. And then, a few years ago, Neil deGrasse Tyson and the astronomy board said, nope, we only have 8. It's a planetoid, doesn't count. So science changes. We learn. As we learn, we grow with it. And unfortunately, that means you have to relearn things. And that is where primates, speaking of science knowledge, primates are bad at relearning. Generally, we cling to the first bit of knowledge we get when we're young, and we're talking primates, chimpanzees, gorillas, baboons, humans, all the primates. You learn something and it's hard to unlearn later on if you realize it's counterfactual. So embracing the scientific process doesn't mean that you believe one thing over another. It means you believe in a process of always learning, always growing. And of course, yes, learning leads to acceptance and diversity. The more you learn about a culture, the less you're afraid of it. The more you learn about a person, the less you fear the unknown. So more education does mean more scientific literacy and more practical approach to the world. That is, notice nowhere in there did I mention religion, because the two have nothing to do with each other. So,
Jack, bills or against that you would vote the opposite if you're in that position?
There's several of them. Certainly, I know of course, the famous was it 2017 or 2018 when they passed 2018?
Which one?
The tax cut.
Yeah,
the beginning of January, I believe it was. Yeah, it was that Congress right before the new one. 2018, the tax cut giveaway. I would not have voted to shift the tax burden to the working class at the and at the expense of the working class to benefit the job creators. We've had long discussions backstage and with others about UBI and other potentialities of doing trickle up in economics, but it has been shown time and again that just doing tax cuts for the rich does not boost the economy. It boosts the wealth of the wealthy. A hard example of that is the data that's coming out these days of that during the COVID pandemic, while 30 million people are unemployed and 100,000 people have died so far. And the economy seems to be tanking, yet the super wealthy have made hundreds of billions in profits just in those couple of months. What affects the working class doesn't necessarily affect the wealthy class. So why didn't Congress, and why didn't Higgins specifically, vote to help his constituents who are, I don't know the numbers, but I don't think there's a lot of billionaires in this district. There may be some, but yeah, it's pretty working class. So that's a key one that I would say that I would have done differently than Higgins. There was also, I'm sorry, you remind me, the
healthcare review.
Right. ACA.
ACHA, American Health Care Act, whatever they called it.
All right. Without a replacement plan, of course, Republicans have been fighting to take away your health care. And a matter of fact, a whole slew of attorneys general and Trump are about to appear before the Supreme Court to try to overturn the ACA. They're still doing this to you as we speak. And as they tell you they're not doing it, they're in court doing it right now. And of course, that particular bill, Higgins voted. They want to take away Obamacare because it said Obamacare. But even if you call it the ACA, they still want to return it. So once again, you look at the bills Higgins voted for that don't necessarily benefit the people of this district. It's an Affordable Care Act. Well,
Yeah, it was to repeal the
there was a bill to repeal the Affordable Care Act. We were trying to remember the name of it. Anyway, that answers that question.
I would
There's a couple
go
of them.
not to speak for Rob, but I would
That's
go
sure.
be bottom of barrel stuff. But I'd imagine that he probably wouldn't have done what Clay did and vote against reauthorizing the Violence Against Women Act. I mean,
That was just recently. I've forgotten all about that. Clay Higgins voted against the Violence Against Women Act.
let it expire. Yeah,
They let it. Well, he
which
didn't.
pretty easy to renew something that's worked for
Right.
years and years,
So, I
right?
mean, Clay isn't for working people and he isn't for women. So I'm not sure how many part of the people in the district are left.
Would you consider empathy or the ability to walk in someone else's shoes a good quality to have in a political candidate?
Absolutely. And I think it's one thing I have in spades. Excuse me. I think it almost should be a requirement of the voters of the representatives. Do your representatives care about you and your problems? Whatever they may be, if you're a marginalized group, meaning a group that faces violence. I'm not trying to accuse that of being politically correct. I'm just trying to think of the right term for a marginalized group, but anybody who faces violence because of who they are, the LGBT community, minorities, as we're seeing in the news this week, and we're not going to address too much, but I will.
Because we're talking about that tomorrow on another
Right,
stream.
we
We're not
have another-
ignoring it.
Right, we're not ignoring it, and it is very much in our thoughts. And the hashtag George Floyd, and we got to stop killing people for living their lives. That's as much as we're going to say about that. But empathy is absolutely essential, because otherwise, all your representative is going to do is represent the people he knows who paid for him to get there. I want to represent every one of the 786,000 people in this district. Even if they don't agree with me, I'm not like Trump. Even if you hate me, I'm still trying to represent you, and I'm trying to get what's best for you. And that is, I think, key for somebody to understand, that just because somebody didn't grow up the same way you did or live the same way you do, doesn't make them less of a human being. And every human being deserves rights and respect.
Represent people you haven't even tried to understand, right? Okay.
Advocate killing, kill them all.
Time here.
That's right. There's some.
Okay.
We got a few
We
minutes.
are running out of time, but we are going to take a couple more.
Oh, did you get a new one?
Yes.
Okay.
From Sam, wanted to know, given Trump's recent threats to Jack and Twitter, Jack of Twitter,
Jack.
that would be,
Jack Dorsey.
saying he's going to shut down social media, regulate them. Why is Trump suddenly pro-regulation, for one? And
That's a good one.
when Trump rolled back Obama-era regulations, do you know what regulations we're speaking of here?
There's about 50 of them. He's attacked the environment.
No, we're internet regulations, I think.
That's probably the FCC
Oh, okay. So,
regulations
yeah.
that, actually, as it turns out, Higgins actually voted against.
Right, the FCC.
The ISP protections.
Right, all of the ISP protections and net neutrality and all of these regulations. A lot of them haven't been legislation. Some have, but they've been executive orders. And
Okay, so who benefited for that and who did it affect negatively? Do you want me to read that again? Okay.
Yeah.
Given Trump's recent, let's start with this one. Given Trump's recent threats to Jack and Twitter, saying he's going to shut down social media, regulate them, why is he suddenly pro-regulation?
okay, stop there. I'll answer that as one part of it. For those who don't know, Trump issued a tweet yesterday, which then, surprisingly, for the first time, Twitter put a disclaimer on fact-checking, basically acknowledging that the content of the tweet was counterfactual, and a link to the actual article. What the tweet was about, it's irrelevant what it was about, but it was about voter fraud. Trump claims that voting by mail will lead to fraud, and then an article saying not so much. Soldiers have been voting by mail for hundreds of years. Absentee ballots are rule in about 2/3 of the states. A lot of people already can. It's just trying to federalize it because we have a pandemic. So obviously it's a partisan political play on his part. He doesn't want everybody to be able to vote. Voter suppression leads to Republicans winning. So in the long and short, he's not pro-regulation. He's going to issue an executive order. Matter of fact, he announced on the Air Force One. This is fairly new. I just saw this right before we came on air. That he's going to issue an executive order, and it'll be released in the morning. And it'll probably be in the form of basically a press release. The executive order will probably say something like, "Twitter can't say anything mean about me anymore." It will have no teeth.
Lying Twitter, lying Jack
it's
wants to shut down my freedom of speech.
Unfortunately, media outlets can't report it with an eye roll, but that's basically the response this deserves. There is not very much that the President of the United States has authority over other than defending the First Amendment, which he has sworn to do, to uphold the Constitution. And what's so ironic about his tirade against Twitter is, as a private entity, Twitter is incapable of violating the First Amendment. They have no regulatory powers, no executive powers. They, as a private industry, can regulate content on their feed as they see fit. You sign up for the terms of service, that long contract that nobody ever reads. And when you sign up for Twitter, and therefore they can, if you say bad words, they can kick you off. If you threaten people, they can kick you off. Yet Trump can do any of those things, and that's been the complaint the whole time. And when they finally did, put some form of, this guy's not exactly telling the truth on it, he went ballistic and threatened retaliation. So it's posturing, and it's a crock of shit. Sorry to put it that way, but
yeah. The second part of that question, though, because we're running out of time here, was when Trump rolled back Obama era regulations, who did that benefit and who did it impact negatively?
Well, rolling back the regulations, most of the regulations, and I've read, I think there's a list of around 50, and specifically the internet was the question. Well, all of them. It benefited the ISPs, the people who own these networks. Now they can sell your info, including your location, in real time, and they don't even have to tell you or notify you that that's the case. So the primary benefit of deregulating was so that people, and it's so funny with the memes going around about how Bill Gates is going to put a chip in you and track you, and that's what the vaccine's all about. It's kind of funny following QAnon and when it's your neighbors, but here we are in real time. The Republicans already allowed ISPs to do that to you with your phone, which everybody carries around. You carry around a tracking device everywhere you go. I promise you, this or one like it. So that's who it benefited.
We have time. Oh wait, see, I keep thinking that we're like out of time here.
No, we're fine.
We actually only have a couple more questions. So
hey, we'll get to everybody. Awesome.
Questions, get them in. But okay. One moment, people. Okay, knowing what we know about China's cover-up of the release of COVID, how would you call China to task for it, and what would you do to make sure they minimize the chance of it ever happening again?
Okay, well, I think that's again sort of a misstated question. When you say knowing about how China covers up, we don't know all the facts yet. But the primary takeaway is, why are we attempting to blame a country for being the source of an outbreak? It was a pandemic. It's an outbreak. It happens. People don't run around yelling at us about the swine flu and blaming Kansas and the pigs. I'm sorry. Well, it happened again with H1N1. Also in Kansas.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I knew that one was Kansas. I thought it was also. It's pig farms in the U.S. for the Spanish flu in 1918 and the H1N1. At any rate, the countries around the world do not circle around and say the United States is evil and must be punished. They spread a plague upon the world. It was not a weaponized act. So therefore, that arrogance of, what should we do to make sure it never happens again? Well, you could, like we had back a few years ago, form a pandemic response team to prepare for international outbreaks of novel viruses like COVID-19, and therefore be prepared for these actions to undertake. Smart people already look at all these things, and it had been fixed. And that merely points out to the ineptitude of this administration that dissolved the team because they didn't want to pay a bunch of people to sit around for what they didn't consider to be a problem until it became a problem. You don't wear your seatbelts for when you're sitting in the driveway. You wear them for when you suddenly need them without warning on the highway when somebody rear ends you. So the best thing, of course, is to follow scientific method and be prepared. We should be prepared for 21st century challenges that our country will face. And as we've seen from the Black Plague and probably many long before that, but the first major recorded one that killed off a third of the world in Europe, specifically killed in the 1300s. Pandemics happen. We allow medical science to do what they do, and their advice was be prepared for it. Be prepared to isolate, track, trace, quarantine, and all of these things that we let slip away when infected people showed up, and then suddenly we have a pandemic to deal with. I know that was a long answer. I'm not blaming China. They millions of their people died as well. I don't think they did it as thumbing their nose at Western civilization. It's a tragedy, human tragedy around the world, and we all share that burden.
More new ones, because I only have one more.
Oh, that's fine. When we're done, we're done.
Okay.
Yeah, I've ended it then before. We'll try to stretch it out for them. I'll make a really long answer to this one, whatever it is. What's the?
Well, okay.
The one I didn't check.
What happened to the charity hospitals in our state? I can talk about this one with you if you need.
Yeah, that's since it's more of a local issue, and we did talk about the charity hospitals in our state basically changed under Bobby Jindal, our former governor, who screwed the budget so badly that it gave John Bel Edwards a whole new series of challenges when he first was sworn into office, and then he actually ended up with a balanced budget by the end of that. But that's neither here nor there. Back in 2012, I believe.
Also, we already had like charity hospitals to begin with, but they weren't so prolific. And essentially, what got them to the point they're at now, where they really do struggle, is that in I want to say it was the 2012 session, because it wasn't a fiscal session. Bobby Jindal didn't want to accept federal matching funds for healthcare, essentially Medicaid expansion. And so while doing that would have saved the budget for the state that year, he set up this weird ragtag process where it was really behind closed doors, and they started talking to public and private partners for these charity hospitals, right? Well, they really prioritized for-profit entities over nonprofit entities. They set up this charity hospital system that was supposed to exist without the need for these federal funds. Well, doing that allows these private companies who know it is a public charity hospital system to sort of like ration care and make their own prices and all of that. Well, now we've got all of these Medicaid dollars and the budget's doing better, but these charity hospital systems have done little other than, maybe you see a primary care physician at your charity hospital and they don't want to do this elective procedure, or they don't want to give you, maybe it's a Catholic hospital and they don't want to do certain procedures because of that. They can kind of manipulate wait times. Really what's happened is all of this is accumulated in what was originally a good idea being so expensive. We often credit these hospitals for why our rural hospitals haven't closed down. I would argue that Medicaid expansion has a lot more to do with that, but I think the charity hospital system was a noble idea that works incredibly poorly and is pretty indicative of the entire policy platform of Governor Jindal. So, yeah.
And we discussed as soon as they started these public-private partnerships, we began to see hiring freezes in local areas, and of course, people. Whenever a private entity takes over any corporation, they're allowed to bring in their own staff. So it actually probably hurt the people of Louisiana more directly than. Looking back on it, the Medicaid expansion helped remediate that, because one of our biggest industries, of course, because we gear towards people, one of our biggest industries here is healthcare. So having viable healthcare that it can actually treat a wide variety of conditions is better for the district. Everybody's healthier, and it's also it's an economic force. I mean, there's no way to look around it. Hospitals are also a business.
Yeah. I mean, to just look into that, I think I'm not trying to crap on the charity hospital system here, but now we do have Medicaid expansion. The whole point of this was to avoid doing it. Why who didn't want to do it? Gee, I guess is because we had a Democratic president. But now that we've got that, there's really no need for these, what are essentially like almost, they're nonprofits, but they're nonprofits.
But now we have 500,000 more people who have insurance who didn't at that time. So when you talk about the charity hospital system, which is why Claire answered that, we talked about it before. It's a whole lot of intertwined, complicated things, but we're actually better off now, is the final answer. Okay, so I think that looks like that's hey Rob, what a great team put together. Thank you very much. Thank you, SB Johnson, excellent team. Dave, I think you should speak more. She likes your voice. Either that or your laissez-faire attitude. So this was a great session. Thank you, each of you, Claire, of course, Dave, and Ash. Thank you for being on there. This was a particularly fun episode of Swampside Chats. I hope you all learned a little something. I wanted to show you that this is not a singular effort. We really do have a team of people, and there's a lot more people who are off screen and elsewhere that are really helping us put this together. But we're in it to win it. We're here to help you get Clay Higgins out of office. And that's what we're here to do. I'm giving you a good person who listens to smart people, and I just demonstrated that. Lead by example. Thank you for joining us tonight, and we'll see you again next week. Every week we do these. We do have another event tomorrow, but that's a special event and separate, and I'll link it separately. But Swampside Chats every Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. Thank you from all of us to all of you, and good night.